I run these seminars, discussions, I limit our speakers to 3 to 4 people on the panel because that's where we all have time to talk and laugh with it and all of that. This topic, Office as a Hub for Collaboration and Wellbeing, has been discussed a lot in the last 1 year, 1.5 years. And that's why I wanted to freshen it up a little bit and not just talk about the same things again and again. And that's when I decided we need speakers from different perspectives, different verticals of the industry. And that's why we've got Sudhir, who is the Director of Real Estate from Tetra Pak.
And Workplace Experience.
And Workplace Experience, thank you. So that brings in the client side of things for us to understand what they are facing and where they are. We've got Kirsty from Leesman, the Director of Business Development there.
Development Director, yeah, that's fine.
Right. We've also got Kate here, thank you Kate for joining us, who is also a menopause and gender equity consultant. So we'll get your viewpoints on the well-being and how we bring well-being into workplace design. And then we've got lovely Chris, who's hosting us today.
Never been described.
Just being nice.
Thanks.
The MD of Federal, who's hosting us today and also bringing his knowledge on furniture. So thank you for joining us, Chris. We've got May Fauzi, who is the MD at MF Studios, and she's also the President-elect of BIID. And she'll be bringing her experience of how she handles her clients on the project. And then we've got the lovely Gurinder, who's Director at M. Moser, again bringing in the whole design aspect to the dialogue today, right? So let's get started we've divided this into 4 topics. I don't know if you guys can read from there.
Yeah, you are.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I'm gonna,
Mean.
and I'm not even sure if people can read it from back there. I'm gonna anyway say it, but just so that you know. So we're starting with collaborative working because again, that's something that we've all been talking about, where everyone says, oh, the key to the problem, the solution to the problem is let's make a lot of collaborative working spaces in the offices. Let's talk about that. Starting with you, Gurinder, I'm going to throw this question to you. So your practice, M. Moser, is at the leading edge of workplace design strategy. And in the last 18 months, the physical office was largely obsolete, and now we are all in this trial stage, I think, I call it a trial stage, where no one knows what's right, what's wrong. So what are the key factors now influencing the future plans? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're absolutely right, Harsha. Thank you. I think, corporate real estate, I can't get over the number of conversations that have happened in the last couple of years. Is the office dead? Is it alive? Is it good? Is it bad? I mean, it's just, it's been never ending at one level. And what I find it quite interesting, actually, as an observation to hear that there are still some people who are going, never going back. Never going back. But I think most people do want to, in reality, and we're certainly seeing, the office is filling up, and more of our clients are getting busier in their offices because we all do need human interaction. But I think we've learned some lessons, which is what was really important. We've learned that people need choice, and the value of our people is really important. And a big one in my heart really is that we've learned the importance of kindness, and we've learned the importance of health. And I think as designers moving forward, just thinking about your question, it's intrinsic to what we're doing today. Because when we're designing now, it is a very subtle shift, it's a really important shift. We are thinking about it in our day-to-day design solutions. But I think what we're seeing more than anything is a future where change is inevitable. I think change has always been there, but the speed with which it's happening and the frequency, I don't think we've seen before. And I think it is sometimes quite difficult for people to keep up with that because it's just such high turnover of change. And I think, it goes back to what we've just been talking about in the previous event. There is a sense of people and planet in what we're doing. And I'm seeing that a lot in everything and every conversation that we have. When we're designing and specifying, it's a critical part of the conversation. But I did think about the detail of your question, and there's four strategies think are going to be quite pivotal in the future. The first one, I think, is flexibility. I think that's going to be crucial in corporate real estate, architecture and design. And I think there's a couple of ways that I see it really playing out. I think there are occasions when we're looking at a project and you get a brief, and by the time you hand over, it's not necessarily relevant, and it's a difficult scenario to manage. But some projects run for 2 years, 3 years from the minute you take the brief to when it hands over, and so our design solutions really have to be adaptable. They have to be reconfigurable on a day-to-day basis, but also so we have to be thinking about that when we're designing, but also year on year. I think that's part of the future, is year on year, facilities professionals are going to need the flexibility. And that links to infrastructure, because you don't think about it quite, a lot of the time we don't think about making sure our infrastructure is flexible. So when we're designing M&E solutions, they also need to have that level of adaptability built in. And I think if we do that, what we're doing is, we're actually empowering people, which is really critical. And then we know that as people come back, that is part of what they're looking for. And it gives them ownership. So we've got much more chance of keeping them there. And then the second bit, I think, is around lease arrangements. And I know I touched on this earlier. I think they are still, for some businesses, too long. I think 5 years is pretty much, becoming standard fare, but actually for some businesses, still too long, because change is happening so fast. The turnover of change is at a speed, as I said, where I don't think we've seen it before. So
I'm looking at Sudhir to nod his head to that. Too long,
It's
too
true.
short, that is
But
true.
yes.
I think it's different for different businesses,
Yeah.
but I think that having, there's a statement that you hear quite often, one size fits all, and it doesn't. It really doesn't. And that's in real estate, but that's also in life. As people, it doesn't fit necessarily. But I think that the future has got to encompass sitting around the table much earlier in the process when we're looking at design. It's got to be with landlords at the early stages, before any Cat A has been put in, so that we avoid unnecessary strip out. And I think that's got to be part of the future dialogue. And then a mouthful to say, but sustainability, reuse, adaptive reuse and recyclability. I think we've just talked about this in the previous one, but one man's rubbish is another man's treasure.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's got to be a part of our future. And we need to be creating that when we're designing. That needs to be in our minds when we're creating. So it's quite normal, I'd say, almost now, to upcycle our furniture. But we don't think about upcycling in our buildings. We don't think about upcycling our desks or our doors. It's happening, but it's really slow. And it needs a bit of a shove, basically. And I think that needs to move slightly further, and I've noticed it starting to come through in some projects and products, is the turning our waste material into beautiful products. You're seeing worktops, we're seeing flooring, but it needs to go further. We need to be using our waste cleverly. And then this every time I say this, it makes me chuckle, but petitioning. When I started 20 years ago, petitioning was probably the ugliest you could think of. Demountable petitioning. I can remember fighting with people about it. And I think it's a challenge, and if there's anybody in here that works with engineering and petitioning, this is a real challenge, because what we need is petitioning that is well engineered, that manifests what we need from an acoustic perspective, but looks beautiful, and that can be moved around and be relocated and reused, so that we're responsible in the way that we do that. But who wants an ugly space, right? We don't want to be in an ugly environment, so we need to make it beautiful. I'll be really quick now, because I know I'm rambling, but diversity and inclusivity, up there for me. We need difference in order to create positive change, because change is happening, and it's happening a lot, so let's keep it positive. And then something that I am seeing in briefs coming through a lot more, and we are talking about as a practice more in our work, is a sense of fun, a sense of joy, comfort and safety. And I think they are all things that we responded to through the pandemic. And we are looking in the eye of a storm at the moment, you know, and I think people are going to want spaces that make them feel comfortable but energised, something that's going to put a smile on their faces. And that could be graphics, that could be colour, that could be all sorts of things, even playful. And I think this is where the creativity will really come to fruit, is the unexpected interjections of architectural elements, so that when you come in, you get the unexpected. And I think that is certainly what I think, from our perspective, what I'm seeing the future is looking like.
Yeah, so I'm just stressed upon those 4 strategies,
Yeah.
guys, can you hear us at the back? Sorry, you can. 4 strategies, and which all make sense, and especially the whole human angle, as to pull people back in and
Yeah.
to retain them. So yeah, I completely get that, but I'm going to jump to you now, Sudhir, because this is sort of connected. The question is, but while we were going through all this and while we are trying out all of this, there was a lot of discussion about alternative models for our clients, right? And a lot of clients that I spoke to were talking about, oh, we are going to go hub and spoke. You know, we'll just have a small space, but then we have smaller other spaces. Or no, we're going to downsize. How many have downsized? I'm not sure. What are you experiencing? I know with your last job, if I can name it, at Lego, and with the new one at Tetra Pak, what was your experience and what are you seeing now?
We're talking about downsizing. Google has just bought, I think, their buildings. Which
Yeah,
they
talk
own.
about downsizing.
That's during the pandemic.
Sure.
At the start of the year.
Yeah.
For those who don't know Tetra Pak, I think it's a packaging company. You have it every day in your life. Everyone around the world. But I think I'm coming from a perspective of production as well. So when we say offices or workplaces, we're actually seeing it from multiple different angles as well. We have employees who had to go to the office. Their office was a factory or a lab. And it's not white collar, blue collar divide, it is the job you do divide.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference. So for us, it's always been how do we bring about a flexibility there? So yes, it is about choices. Yes, it is about flexibility. But how does it apply to everyone? Is flexibility purely about working at home in the office, or is there more to it? So we didn't want to wait. Like you said, it's a learning process. We didn't want to wait and see what's going to happen in 10 years' time. So we've actually gone out, launched a flexible working arrangement globally in every single country. We are in 85 countries, everywhere, for every single employee in different ways, depending on your job. So if you are an office worker, then you have a flexibility to work from the office and home. And if you are in a lab or in a production site, then you have flexibility in other ways, which is, for example, bank of hours, sabbatical, job sharing. So flexibility in many more ways. But that also meant that our offices change. They change in the sense of not downsizing, but right sizing. It makes us now think if we are 84 countries but 169 locations. So the question then is, why are we in so many locations if we are in that country? And then that makes us think about what do we want to do. So is it already, have we decided, is it a hub and spoke model? No, we haven't. But we are now really thinking about where should our offices be, how are they well connected, how do you get there? We are thinking about all of this, which we didn't really think of before. That is the entire aspect of where our right sizing or downsizing is going to. So we are not downsizing.
Sure.
And as our production increases, we actually taken more because we need more space for that as well. But we are very clear that the office is here to stay. It's going nowhere. We are
Good to
humans.
know, right?
Yes, it's going nowhere. There is a lot of passive learning. There is a lot of learning that happens on the job with people, collaboration, meeting people together, but also brand engagement. We are specifically not a B2C company. We are not a Nike, we are not a Adidas. We are a Tetra Pak, which is a B2B company. How do we make sure your purpose is actually integrated in the work you do? Because we are all working for a purpose. And the office or the workplace plays a big role in that. And so I would not say office, I would always say workplace, because it's also in a production site or a lab, which is not necessarily an office. So that's actually changed, and we have changed our brand guidelines to see how we can be more purposeful in us coming to the office, in how the office is, well-being. We actually have a brand new menu of spaces, which we are now putting in as well. Does that help us downsize? No, it does not. It means we are right-sizing our spaces. But another linkage that we have to all of it is talent attraction. And the reason I say that is because we are now having employees, because of our flexible working arrangements from a HR global policy model, employees who are based in locations where we don't have offices or they can't get to the office every day, but we still want them. So we are now actually trying to see, okay, how should our offices then be if our people are not necessarily there? I have 4 people in my team who don't have offices and they are living there and they're across the globe. So it's actually changed the way we completely work as well.
Yeah.
But just to the last point is learning. We implemented this last year. We take it to board. We are still family owned. We are a private company, so the family still has a say in a lot of all of this. So we go to them every year. That's our arrangement. That every year we are going to go to them, tell them how it's going. Is it working? Is it not? Learn from it, and then take it forward. So the sabbaticals, the ones that I told you about, additional flexibility is something we're going to try and implement that globally everywhere as well. Taking our workplace guidelines as well. So we are in a learning journey. We can't say we got the silver bullet, but we are not waiting. I mean, that's for sure. We are not waiting for anything. We think we need to try. This works for us as a production B2B company, which is global, headquartered in Switzerland, but a Swedish company. So I think every company has its own unique way of working, and this works for us for now.
Great. Oh no, that's so interesting, especially the term right sizing. And you just sound so confident, even though you don't know if it's going to go work or not. That's great. Well, you don't have a choice; you'll have to be confident. Because I'm working with a client at Snapchat, and they're building a new headquarters here in Clarendon, 7 floors. And for months, they were struggling with the whole flexibility. Okay, what sort of flexibility? And the CEO said, "I'm not saying anything. How do you plan for that, right?" But then they ended up saying, "No, we are doing it. We're not waiting."
Yep.
So it's challenging, but very interesting.
But just the last point on that as well, there's the reason why a lot of people may not want to jump into it is cost driven.
Yes, of course.
It's like, how do we budget for this? Is this going to be is there a payback to this, or does it work or not? We have a payback. It's a regular payback that you would anyway have. So we are not saying that we are investing more than what we normally would. So it's completely not going against our accounting or business at all.
Right.
And sustainability has got a complete different payback. It's not something we are trying to calculate as a payback for 5 years or 10 years or 3 years. It's just something we just have to do. So that's separate and out of the equation of discussions when it comes to a 10-year lease. What's the depreciation? Is that going to come or not? We
Yeah.
just don't discuss it for sustainability.
Yeah, there's no choice on that. You just have to do it right, isn't there? I know we can keep talking, and I'm sure we will afterwards, but I'm conscious that I've got 6 speakers and an hour, so I'll try and rush it a little bit. May, over to you then. So in your business, I'm sure you get asked by your clients how to implement change. Now, before COVID, it was simple, right? For strategists like Sarah, you get asked a lot of times, how do you implement change? But now it's different. So what are the key considerations that you think about, especially to facilitate the whole collaboration angle to it? And of course, I'm guessing you would create different sort of spaces for them. How do you make it work?
So I think if you go a few years back and how the design industry in general was trying to push the workspace or the workplace to become more social, collaborative, and interactive. The attempt was there. Activity-based working has been pushed through and through many times. You see then how it has got accelerated just purely because of the pandemic. So within a year, everything has changed, and that acceleration I think helps us as designers to kind of move towards what I think is the right direction. When you start thinking about collaboration, there's a misperception of, we'll put 2 sofas and we'll sit together. Beanbags are great.
Yeah.
Put some beanbags and people will sit together. It's not really quite that.
Yeah.
And our needs are different. So the main consideration for me is thinking about the needs of the users, and Tetra Pak is a big example. You think about what works for you. So we have to think on behalf of our clients what works for them, and not just them as a business. So you start off with a strategic, the business needs this, but then you kind of drill down and you think about the teams as well. You think about each individual team, how they work, how they operate. Every team is different. Every team has got its own needs, and you have to cater for that. So it's not just putting people together and throwing some sofas and they will talk and it will be great and collaborative. It's more. There's a lot more to it. It's the how people operate, how people talk and interact and communicate, how the youngsters within this business are going to learn, and passive learning being one of it. Being actually in an office with desks does help,
Sure.
because you can listen to your CEO kind of talking over the phone or to another colleague, and if you are a junior within that business, you will understand a lot more, not just about the business but the values and the culture, and that's important. It's belonging, the sense of belonging, and that can come from a desk. It doesn't have to come from a sofa. But having said that, because we do our admin days, as we both were discussing previously, at home, and we could focus and do the focus work at home, there are certain days where we come to the office and you think you need to push people to interact a bit more. And that's where the activity-based working comes in. So definitely thinking about various spaces, various setups, how each and every team works. Certain teams wouldn't need the sofa and the chair. They would need more focused areas where they can put their heads down, with a meeting room where they can all get together.
Sure.
Others would be more, I don't know, interactive and creative, and they would need another different type of space. So it is really drilling down to the needs of each and every team, making sure that you are helping create that culture and help kind of nourish that culture, because we go to the office for the culture. We actually go and work for certain employers, of course for the pay and of course for the job and the job description, but part of it being part of something bigger, belonging and having the culture there to kind of thrive through as a business and as an individual. So I think it's thinking about both sides. Think about the person, the individual, think about the team, and then holistically think about the business. If you kind of get that equation right, you will end up with a space that supports everyone.
Yeah. Oh, and I thought sofas are the answers to everything, right? And no, but you're right. Like my personal experience, one of the projects, we did throw a few sofas in as a collaboration for a particular team. They came back saying, no, all we need is storage boxes, because we stack them up and then just stand around them and have our meetings, but we also use that to store our engineering drawings. So you're right, it depends on the teams and what they're doing, isn't it? Moving on to, again, you, Sudhir. Do you see the physical workplace as a destination to support different ways of working and an experience for teams to feel a part of the overall culture of the company, as Maya was mentioning? Are you even considering exterior spaces as well as the interior environment and trying to combine them to make it work better?
Sorry, I'm going to take some of your time. I'm going to be quick
No,
so that you can
so
talk.
I left
Yes,
well-being
yes,
for them.
yes.
It's coming all on them
Yes.
now.
But I think for what we have been doing, we look at three main areas on how we are approaching our entire, not just our workplace strategy, but our workplace experience strategy, which is everything together. That is food, people, and planet. Food, because that's what Tetra Pak is all about. We are all about making sure food reaches the plates of people. We are about our own people and the planet that we're in, which is very, very important in our strategy itself. But that is not a strategy we have come up with. It is a Tetra Pak strategy which we have taken on forward. How does this come into our spaces? And that's very important for us. So that is how everything then follows through as well. So is our spaces, our workplaces are centered around food, not all of them. Each new one now is where you're coming in, you're walking into a cafe area, it's not hidden away, the restaurant is where you are, the smells are fine, they're all part of the workplace because that's what we do. We are also looking at healthy food. We were just talking about it as well, on how we can actually reduce our impact on the planet with the food we eat and reduce wastage, kind of food, etc., etc. People perspective is how we can create spaces where you take quick decisions rather than actually having meeting rooms where you're going in and booking a 5-hour meeting. It's crazy. We are actually changing that, and that cultural change is so important to take things forward. And the cultural change is related to the overall transformation within Tetra Pak as well. We are trying to be more agile in the way we work. So we actually have a rule that we have now, not a rule, but a guideline where we start meetings 5 minutes after the hour. So you always have 5 minutes. You're not starting at 12, it's 12:05, and everyone does. Many people do that, but not everyone. But it helps for the bio break. It helps for getting up and stretching or going from one place to the other. That actually does help. You can set your outlook, by the way. You can set your outlook to do that. It's not that we need to sit and do anything. It's easy to do. It's very well there. But the reason I'm saying all this is because we are trying to see how we can bring purpose to our offices. And these are different ways which are not directly design or workplace related, but the whole, it's a holistic way of approaching it, which we call purpose-based workplaces. That's what we're calling all our offices going forward. So the question is it a destination? No, it's another place where people can work. But it's very important that when you're coming to the office, there is a purpose of why you come. You're not just coming because you just woke up in the morning. You're coming because you've actually planned that out to be there as well. Based on your personal life, globally, even in countries where we could not have done it before, we're able to do it now. And in many countries where you could never, you had to wait for your boss to leave, and that's there, even in Tetra Pak. Now it's changing, and I think that's where I would say that the office is then changing for us, or the workplace is then changing for us.
So it's bring about a cultural shift
Yes.
and not just, change in environment.
Exactly.
And of course the purpose would pull people in, but also the purpose kind of retains your people and staff there, isn't it? So now thank you for sharing that. Over to Kirsty. Your company, Leesman, do a lot of research, and I'm going to ask you a question about how you work with clients such as Tetra Pak and others. So what tools and techniques do you use to help clients prioritize their requirements and get used to this whole human-centric approach? I know we discussed about it briefly, so if you can just share that with us.
Absolutely. So I guess Leesman are an organisation, we're here to help organisations be the best they can possibly be and create outstanding places to work, or workplaces, I guess. And the way we do that is using methodologies and our survey tools. So that's the way we collect data. We have a handful of PhD researchers within our team who have developed this methodology over the last 12 years, and it's stood the test of time. Since 2010 to now, we still utilise the same survey, same questions. We have slightly updated that recently, mainly just some slight language tweaks more than anything, and the way that the survey flows as you as a user going through it, just to make the experience easier for you and probably more engaging as well. So that's the kind of data collection piece. We collect that data on employee experience, and then we have a global benchmark. So we hold the largest global database of employee workplace experience. So from an employee experience perspective, we have the data to share with you all, and we're very proud of that. It's very evenly distributed as well across the globe, so it's not a case of the data that we've collected is very US heavy or very APAC heavy or Europe heavy. It's pretty evenly distributed across the board as well, which is fantastic. The data's robust and allows us to be inclusive, as you were talking about previously as well. What are we seeing at the moment from that data is really, really interesting, and I wish I had about 6-7 hours with you to tell you all what's going on, because there's a lot, and I'm sure Sudhir can attest to that as well with some of the data that he's collecting at Tetra Pak. It's really, really, really interesting at the moment. I think one of the biggest areas for me the most interesting is this concept of hotelification, and drawing the parallels between that hotel experience and what we can do with the office experience as well. The office, I think there's a lot of this, I know the title of this session is around collaboration and well-being, and there's lots of discussion about the office being this place of collaboration now, bringing people together so that we can collaborate on projects. Actually, the data that we're bringing out or seeing or kind of observing and sharing those insights is that people are more interested in activities of connection in terms of the workplace, and not always collaboration. We can see now that the collaboration activity happens as well at home, if not better in some instances. So the office is no longer the only point of collaboration in terms of activities that you do, which I think is really interesting. So we don't have to now design the office to only be about collaboration. The other flip side to that is that individual desk-based work is still one of the most important factors for people in the office environment. So it's not a case of designing an office that's all about connection, because we still, when we come to that office, need moments of focused work. So yeah, there's a combination to that, but really what I'm interested at the moment is there's three factors: hosting clients and visitors, learning from others, and those informal social interactions. There's where we're seeing the biggest gap between home working and office working right now. So that's potentially where the draw for the office now becomes. I know there's huge conversation at the moment around what the office is, how we bring people back to the office. And I think that some leaders have taken it completely the wrong way by mandating people to come back to the office. You have to be there 3 days a week, you have to be there all week. Unfortunately, they're going to lose their talent that way and very quickly as well. So to your point with freedom, what we're seeing as well is that people who have higher levels of freedom to choose where they work have a much more supported experience with the work that they do, and therefore a much better employee workplace experience too. So the higher freedom you have all round, so in terms of the methodology of the survey, it's broken down into a few parts. The first part is we ask you questions on 21 activities. So you would choose the activities out of that 21 list that you do, and then you would respond on how supported you feel in those activities. We then ask 10 mandatory impact statements. How well does the office support you in those? Things like culture, sustainability, collaboration. And then we ask you questions around physical and service features. So physical features being meeting rooms, desk chair, noise levels. It's a bone of contention for many in the office. And service features, the toilets, tea and coffee refreshment facilities, the cleanliness, tidiness of the workspace as well. Those are really important for people when you're drawing us back to the office. So that's the methodology, and that's how we've created the Leesman Index, which is on a scoring of a scale between 0 to 100. So when you deploy a survey, you automatically become part of the Leesman Index, which is brilliant, and we can start to benchmark that data as well. So as I said before, we have this global benchmark of data. You can benchmark against your peers, your competitors, the region that you work in. My personal opinion is that you shouldn't focus only on comparing yourself to your competitors and your peers, because ultimately you are your own organisation, you have your own values. I think it's definitely helpful to give you a standardised understanding and look of where the world is going, but ultimately you take that with a pinch of salt really, and take on those values as well. So yeah, we're using these survey tools to really help drive that employee experience and helping organisations understand why the workplace is there, why you want to be drawing people back to the office as well. As I say, I think the data for us is showing that connection is the real point of connection for us all, and much more around conscious decision making as well. If I'm having to spend my time commuting to the office, I'm spending money on that commute. I am spending energy because I now have to wake up earlier to get to the office, and then also extra time. When I get to the office and I want to experience something over and beyond what I might get at home, and if I don't get that experience, then there's really no point in me coming back to the office the next day. So that's what we're thinking about now, is this conscious decision making and the office being purposeful presence. What is drawing me to the office? When I think about when I'm coming to the office, what are the things I'm thinking about? Who are the people I want to see when I'm in the office? What are the tasks potentially I want to get done? What are the outcomes I want to achieve when I'm in the office? What do I want to see when I'm in the office, feel, and be part of? If I have that in my mind's eye, and if I don't get that, my reflection point at the end of the day when I'm on the commute home is going to tell us quite a lot. I'm not going back to the office, because why would I? The home, we can see from the last point, the data which we can see now is that the average home is supporting the average employee better than the average office. So there's a very compelling, that the home environment creates a very compelling place of work at the moment, and it still to this day creates that space. So for all organisations that want to draw people back to the office, we're going to have to create an outstanding experience, like a really outstanding experience. It has to be purposeful, because otherwise my home gives me everything that I need it to do, other than the point of connection.
So I think it's interesting. I would love to see how that database, that research shifts over
Yeah.
a period of year or so, and how that changes.
Over the winter.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
When people would come
Exactly.
in for heating or saving electricity at home. But also I remember when I sent you the topic and you said, oh, we don't call it as a hub for collaboration, it's a hub for connection, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we just picked the word collaboration and been banging on it for last 1 year. But as we move on, we're discovering more and more things. So I would love to see more of the research. Moving on to Kate. Patiently waiting for us. Thank you, Kate. Because I wanted to focus on well-being as a separate section, and then we'll bring Chris in. So your book, Your Second Phase, amazing.
Thank you.
Talks about how to be empathetic to women who are going through menopause and create a balanced and inclusive environment for women to continue their work life, which is so important. We forget about it. We were just talking about it, isn't it? You can tell we are in that bandwidth now. Okay. That's why we have gone. So what are the challenges in creating such an equal and inclusive space, a dream space? And can you recommend some important factors that we designers should consider while designing?
Okay, so before I say a word, the average age that women, and of course now it includes some non-binary people and trans men, the average age that women and some non-binary people will be when they enter this phase is somewhere between 45 and 55. 1% of all women have their menopause before the age of 40. So that includes all women. So, because of the way that symptoms occur, and there are 40 of them, not the few that we kind of know, that we kind of whisper, because there are 40 of them, they affect every aspect of our life. And we cannot leave them at the gate, we cannot leave them at the security barriers, we can't leave them outside the meeting room, we can't leave them at home, and we can't leave them behind our screens so that they don't interfere with what's going on. They come with us. In fact, if you've got something really important to do, they will be with you and they will be screaming and shouting quite literally while you're doing it. And because of that, everybody else is involved in your menopause. You will not be able to keep it to yourself. No person is an island. And as you are going through this, all your colleagues, all your family, everybody else is going through it with you. So no matter how hard you try, we are all going to experience menopause, whether that's directly or indirectly. So for anyone who's sitting there and is male and is feeling slightly smug, thinking that's not my story, sorry. It so is. And we haven't talked about it. As a society, we don't talk about it. And daytime TV talks about it all the time, but in an office environment, we still don't talk about it. And many people fear that should they mention it, it will impact their career. So, creating an inclusive environment is all about inviting that conversation in. It's all about saying you can talk about this. And it touches on very much what's been said before. This is about relationships. This is about being able to say, I'm having a really shit time today and I just need to be in a cold space in the office. I need a place where you are not going to talk to me, okay? I need a place where I can just be quiet. And all of those things need to be accessible. They need to be immediately accessible without me having to say, ring up facilities or ring up somebody else and say, I just need to be in a different place at the moment. To be able to just go and seamlessly, and at the same time not to be completely isolated and excluded from my team who may have all come in today in order to work together, but I didn't control what happened to my symptoms today because I can't, and therefore I need us to be able to seamlessly morph into whatever space is going on. So if a person comes in on that day and their team are in as well, first of all they have to have the courage to have that conversation, and secondly they have to be able to work within that space. So those spaces that you guys are creating need to be flexible and adaptable, and they need to work seamlessly. And if at the other side of that, a team is the one providing those services, there cannot be, when you ring up the help desk, someone sniggering on the end of the phone going, oh yeah, she's having a bit of a hot flush there. Any comments like that are completely out. And I can promise you that every single survey that is done in the workplace about menopause says that menopause is the butt of jokes. We have changed as a society in the last 2 years, hugely. We understand that we live in a diverse world, that we're not all the same, that we're not all homogenised, and we turn up in the office with a smile on our faces and go home at the end of the day with whatever emotions we've picked up as the day's gone on, and that's okay. We recognise now that we are all different. Kindness, teams, community, purpose, all of those things are really important, and we need the women, the non-binary people and the trans men to stay in our workplaces. We need to ensure that those talented people stay within our workplaces and do their very best. So we have to ensure that we deliver workspaces that enable them to do that.
Woo, thank you.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Kate. So I wanted to include this conversation in the whole well-being section, because we keep talking about well-being in workplace, but we never touch upon menopause or other, needs of genders, and that's why I wanted to, you to kind of bring that out. Also, it came up because I was, and this was about 1.5 years ago at a client meeting, and someone mentioned menopause, and it was a planning session, so we were kind of literally sketching, and the client turns around and says, well, just put a room in the corner and say, for women's use. And I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to say, and I did not say anything, and I'm still regretting. So I just wanted to bring that. If we don't talk, and Giovanni always tells me, we have to bring it in the front, right? So that's why, thank you for sharing that, Kate.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
can I just make a comment and an observation and just throw this out there for being a bit left field? But I have a theory about menopause, because I think men are there side by side with the menopause, because fundamentally it is a hormonal shift.
Mm-hmm.
And I have met many men who have had I was going to say the balls, but who have been brave enough to say, actually I've been and had my hormones checked and they're totally off kilt, and I am totally off kilt inside myself too, and I'm having a version of HRT in order to reset themselves. So I think it's really interesting. I think it does go beyond just women, and I think that we need to be less scared of sort of putting that out there, that it may actually affect more than just women.
So the andropause, which is what it's called,
Right.
is rare, and I don't have the statistics off the top of my head. I should have, but I don't. But the menopause is every single woman on the planet.
Is it not every single man then? It's
No.
No,
That's interesting.
it's a very small percentage, and the treatment is testosterone,
Right.
hands down. That's what it is.
It's
I'm
really
gonna
interesting
move
to
on
know.
to
Sorry, I was
Chris's
just
being
really
so
fascinated.
patient.
Mention testosterone. move on to
The right timing. No, we'll
Build
go
up.
on to the topic actually, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more conversation.
Throw me that hand grenade.
Oh no,
I'm so sorry.
he's never getting me back, right? He's never inviting me back.
Time's of drinks.
I think we'll end at this. So, your company's
We'll end
tagline,
it now.
after you finish talking, your company's tagline is love where you work, and I love that. And now that people can work from everywhere, anywhere, how important do you think is a physical workplace? And while many people still try to work from their tiny living space, many youngsters, right, living in shared accommodation, how can we expect them to love where they work?
That's a question. How long you got? Not long. You've got
maybe
about
2
3
hours.
minutes. Okay. I like the way you came to me last because it means that these lot have all shone in what they've said. Now there's no
There's
pressure
more
whatsoever.
coming.
Let me start with talking about economics because I did a degree in economics,
All right.
so I'm going to bore you all to death.
Oh, go for it.
But very quickly, there's a shift in employee-employer relationships that goes on all the time. What we've experienced in the last couple of years, 2.5 years now, it's dragging on this thing, isn't it? Is a significant shift towards employee empowerment, as it's seen. Certainly employers see it as employee empowerment. From an economic point of view, 2.5 years ago and still today, the UK is running at reasonably full employment, which means that as an employee, you're reasonably secure in your job, in so much as your employer needs you, because you're difficult to replace, because there isn't just millions of people out there who can take your job, who they can access. There are skill shortages, we hear about that all the time. So you've got full employment. What happened just over 2 years ago is, for the first time in a very long time, the government turned round to everybody and said, essentially, you know how your boss expects you to come to the office or come to work? You don't have to. Stay at home. The power is yours. Take
Yeah.
control. Stay at home, look after yourself. Rightly so, absolutely rightly so. Totally advocate that. But what it's done, and the position we're in now, is a situation where, yes, employees, us as individuals, I say employees, everybody feels empowered. Everybody has experienced looking after themselves, spending more time with their family, kindness becoming more of an important part of it, work-life balance becoming a part of things. That's what COVID gave back. I spent more time with my kids through 2020 than I spent the year it did. Strangely, it was a really precious time, 2020 for me, it worked beautifully. It also, historically, I've been a total Monday to Friday office. If you're not in the office, you're not working. And that has totally changed for me as an individual. So, as individuals, what we're always really good at is understanding the why. Why do I go and ride a bike? Because it makes me feel good. Why do you go to the pub on a Thursday evening? Because you enjoy it, because you're engaging with friends and you're engaging with your mates. And you understand the why as an individual really well. What most businesses don't do, and this is pre-COVID, this is just business in general, is they don't understand their why terribly well. So when we come back to the love where you work, which is our tagline, we can create all sorts of different environments. Everybody here, we're preaching to the converted. Us lot are cutting edge. The fact we're all in this room, we're at the upper echelon of people who actually care about what a working environment is and how it should operate. 95% of the population don't know anywhere near as much as anybody in this room because they just don't, or they don't care. There are businesses out there, there are awful workplaces, whether it be an office or a factory environment, awful environments to work in because there's a lack of care. Where am I going with it? I don't know. I do know now.
Cool.
individual understands why, businesses don't. Has anybody heard of Simon Sinek?
Yeah.
Well, there's some people in the room who wrote the book or watched YouTube. Brilliant. Simon Sinek, I'm not coming up with this isn't my brain, this is his, I've stolen it. For those who don't know him, YouTube, book, Start With Why. It deals principally with business. And the idea is that as a business, rather than look at the what and the how of your business on day one, right now we're focusing on it, you start with why. Why are we here? Love Where You Work is a tagline, but it goes deeper than that. What's the vision? What's the mission? What do we want to do as Sigal Group? Our mission sounds all sort of, but this is what you need as a business, is everybody should love where they work. And that's what we want to do. We want to touch as many people in the right way and ensure they enjoy where they work. And that's our mission, that's our vision. We don't, as a business, start with the, what do? We sell office furniture. What can you get me? Oh, some pods and some booths and some desks and some chairs. It's not inspiration, it doesn't engage. And what we need to do is get out there and try to engage with the 95% plus, I'm picking a figure there, it's probably nearer 99%, of businesses that are sat there, and we've all witnessed it, who are there going, trying to get people back to the office. Yeah, 3 of them turned up Tuesday. Oh yeah, we never get anybody in. I mean, I've got a client around the corner who's got an office population allegedly of 550. They have an all-hands meeting on Wednesday. And I went, what, 550? You get 550 in on an all-hands meeting on a Wednesday? No, we get about 250. So wait a minute, it's dictated as a business that you get everybody in, and still they can't even get half of them to come to the office when all the bosses say, come in. There's something fundamentally wrong. Everybody in that business knows what they do. They also know how they do it, but they're not engaged with it. They're not excited by it, they don't enjoy it. So as a business, and what we're working to try and do, and working with people like fellow panellists here, guys out there who we work with as well, is to get businesses to understand that the furniture isn't the be all and end all. The collaboration space, oh you know what, we'll fix it, let's whip some desks out and chuck in some high tables and some sofas. That's fixed it. No, it hasn't. Oh yeah, we'll have pizzas on a Wednesday. Really? I'm going to come all the way to work for a free pizza. Might do for the first couple of weeks, but then I'm properly going to bin that off. It's not exciting. People need to have a purpose, they need to have a why. And most people want to do a good job. Most people want to be engaged with where they work and enjoy it, because it's a significant part of your life. Whether it's a significant part because you're a major driver in the business and you absolutely love it, or whether it's the fact that it's just a great place to work and you've got a good social setup and you enjoy the fundamentals of it, but you put a chunk of your life into it, you've got to enjoy it, you've got to engage with it. The greatest example of it is pre-COVID. It's a long way pre-COVID. 1962, John F. Kennedy turned up at NASA. Many of you have read this again. Turned up at NASA, sees a guy with his janitorial trolley pushing it down the corridor, and he says, what do you do? And the guy turns around to me and says, I'm putting man on the moon. Now, that guy understands why. NASA got it wrong a lot later on, and they're just about pulling it back by getting everybody until we want to go to Mars and the moon and whatever it is. But NASA got it wrong in the 90s, but in the 1960s, NASA was right there. The guy pushing the trolley around the floor, cleaning the floor, wasn't cleaning the floor. He was sending a guy to the moon. He didn't sit there on a Sunday evening going, I'll be able to go to work tomorrow. Soon mop the floor at home. He wanted to be there. He had a mission. He was in with the vision. He loved where he worked. That's what he wanted to do. And yes, we know the fundamentals. Everyone in this room is part of the collective that is offices, environment, workplace. We all know when we've all got the contacts and colleagues and the skill sets to go, let's put some walls up, let's sort the M&E out, let's put some furniture into that. And we can all work out how to design that. But what we really need to be doing is getting out there and engaging with those businesses and saying, the reason why your people are not coming back is not to give it a lick of paint and chuck some sofas and a collaboration table into it. It's not to mandate, come back to the office. Make it magnetic, don't make it mandatory. Yes, it's making the office look and feel and be an amazing environment is a part of it. Getting the culture of it right, getting the why, getting people to engage with it is really what it's about.
Wow. When I asked you that question about the tagline, I didn't know it was so deep in there.
Oh, it was thought through, we didn't just slap it on the
Oh,
wall
I
this
thought
morning.
that we just thought about tagline and put it on, just kidding. No, but you're right. It is all about the purpose, the why behind it. That has to come first. And for us to understand that why before we start designing anything. So thank you for sharing that, Chris. I'm conscious about the time. And I know Natalie's got the drinks ready.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just going to, I know we've got a few more questions, but the speakers are going to hang around afterwards for drinks. So if you have any questions, you can ask them then. I'm not spending more time there. I'm just going to throw one question at all of you. It's not on the list. Simple one. If just one word comes to mind about where we are heading with workplace design, it could be the same answer. What would it be? I'll give you a second to think about it. Just one word.
Exciting,
Sorry?
exciting.
Exciting.
I have one, empowering people.
Empowering.
That's
people.
two
Good
words.
one.
That's two
Empowerment.
words.
Empowerment.
Empowerment.
There you go. There you go. Any of those?
Keep starting with the letter E, this is good.
Empathy.
Empathy.
Oh, we are going well now. Go another side down.
I'm feeling pressure now to find a P word.
I was going to say enjoyment.
Oh, we have to now.
You
It
have
has
to,
be
yeah.
empathy.
Kate,
There's a
you
book
have to
in
go
this,
with
keep
equity.
that.
Can I put it in your equity? Starts with an
Yeah,
E.
equity, but I would have said acceptance.
Acceptance,
You
okay.
can spell it wrong, it's
Yeah.
fine.
Acceptance and
How about
equity.
Yeah.
Power? What are you bringing?
Oh gosh.
It's 1 second.
I think it's energy.
Energy. Okay, all right. Anyone else thinks of any powerful words?
Use one of the other 25 letters.
Yeah. Let's move away from the E. Anyone else? What would you think? Sorry?
Compassion.
Compassion. That's very important. Anyone else? Everyone looks like they need like a bottle of wine or something before I can wake them up.
Ready?
All right, there you go. All right, guys.
If anyone wants to open the
Yeah, I think it's getting a bit warm too. But thank you, everyone. I'm letting you off the hook for now. But while we're having drinks, please feel free to talk to people. They might have questions. But thank you once again for taking the time to come join us. Thank you.
The second question was rubbish anyway.
Oh, there you go. I'll let you go.
Yes, we did. Anne Miller.
Yeah, I'm driving.
And we all got it.
That was one of the So I'm just curious what The challenge of keeping it
You both did very well.
Thank you. And I do fantastic.
White wine.
Do I get Sorry, I'm just going to. Because even the room where the book I don't like it. I was almost about it. If you stretch it to the second question, it might not. People are polite, they'll sit around, but I don't. Even that little bit woke me up. I'm telling you.
So Joel was sitting like that. What's that?
It's just like,
That's
something
not
that
what
they
it
make
means.
having to train them and so on. Thank you.
Wine, yeah,
Oh, thank you. It's just that every time I think of store, I'm struggling. And the thousands of men. And I love it that you're kind of very about it.
I know, I can't really predict it.
Well, we're not literally actually, you're not. Yeah,
And I'm over the era. No, I'm trying to reword that. I'm older than you. But I'm over the era where my mum
Years ago, the Mickey
so I was going through some really scratch times. And I'm sure when it's the correct time, I've never meant to be nice when I look back. And that is always back to the times. I think it's partly because the scratch time often comes at the same time. No, I know, because my mum went to and honestly, I have to say, it doesn't cure anything. I think that's it doesn't help cure the bruise or break the leg, but everything else is amazing. I'm not as confident when you go on doing people. I'm much better at hiding it. But that made me think really upset me was self-doubt and paralysis and then suddenly it's like, oh my God, I'm stressed out. Something that really isn't things to be stressed about. Why am I stressed about? Now I'm stressed about why am I stressing?